few weeks ago, I did a little post about form being king, and that is so true. If you don't have good form, you're not maximizing the benefits of the move, and you're also really setting yourself up for injury. So today I wanted to talk about 7 fundamental moves to have the most appropriate form. Now, in the upcoming weeks, I'll be showing different exercise moves and how to make them easier by modifying or harder to really push your limits. But this is the middle ground. And the reason I'm showing you these 7 moves is because they are the base for 90% of all exercises that we do. And if you learn to have really good form at whatever level your body needs, you're going to progress at a better pace than if you're just pushing through with inappropriate form. So let's get started. The first move we're going to talk about today is plank. Plank is very important because it is the base for all of our push-up moves and a lot of our core exercises, and plank is like the ultimate exercise because you're really using every single inch of your body. We do want to make sure we have perfect form though. So let's get started. First things first, you want to make sure that your hands are directly under your shoulders. If you're leaning back or forward, you can cause a shoulder impingement. And back, you can lower your lower back injury too. So we're going to have our hands right underneath our shoulders. My shoulders are very engaged so that when I push up into that plank, I'm not going to go like this with my shoulders. They're locked and firm into place. So my hands are right underneath. I'm looking a couple inches in front of my hands. I'm going to put my toes underneath, and I'm going to come up into plank. Now, everything is tight in my body. My quads are tight, my calves are tight, my core is tight. I still have my shoulders underneath my hands. My arms are engaged, my shoulders are engaged, and if you notice, I have a very straight line from my head to my shoulders to my hips to my knees to my feet. My heels are pushed back into the plank, okay? And I really make sure that once I'm up here and I'm getting tired, I don't start going like this or putting my butt up or down. If you get tired, you do want to come down to your knees, which would be the modification. But we'll talk about that in a different video. The second move we're going to talk about today is squats. So squatting is very important to have really good form because it is in every type of program. Whether you're doing yoga, you squat in your chair. Whether you're doing plyo, we have squats. Whether you are doing weightlifting or plyometrics, there are always squats involved. So we want to make sure that we have really good form so we don't hurt our knees or our low back or hips, and so we're maximizing the benefit of every move. We're going to start with your feet either right under your hips or slightly wider. Okay, not as like super wide like our shoulders. Those are different types of squats. And when you're in a workout program, they'll tell you, oh, we want a sumo squat or a wide squat. Okay, but for your basic squat stance, you're going to have your feet a little wider than your hips or right underneath your hips. Your weight is in your heels, and you should be able to wiggle your toes. When you come down into that squat, you want to actually pretend like you're sitting in a chair. If you think that, then you're going to keep your chest up. Sometimes you'll see people squatting by bending forward, and that's not really what we're supposed to be doing. It's not using the right muscles, and it can also injure your knees. So we want to squat back into a chair so our chest is up, and you can practice this using a chair. Now, let's look at my knees before we turn sideways. When I squat down, my knees are over my feet, okay? They're not leaning in like this. If your knees are leaning in like this, you're going to put a lot of strain on the inside of your knees. So we want to make sure that they're right over our feet, and the same goes for out. We also don't want them going out. If you notice that you're struggling with that, you can play with your stance a little bit. You may find that a slightly wider stance will help you from splaying out, or a slightly closer stance will prevent you from coming in. So keep all of that in mind. You're going to notice that I sit back into that chair, that chest is up. My shoulder is in line with my knee, which is in line with my feet, right? So that's how we have good squat form. With or without weights, it doesn't matter. You want to make sure that your form is perfect. Okay, so our third move today is going to be a V-sit. This actually is very important because it is a base for a ton of core routines, and you really can cause a lot of pressure on your tailbone if you're doing it incorrectly. Lower back issues, we really want to make sure we have that good form. So let's sit down. First things first, the key is to have our chest pretty upright, okay? So I'm going to take my hands, I'm going to put them behind my butt, but see my shoulders are in line with my wrist, okay? So I came back a little tiny bit, and then you're going to elevate your feet. Now you notice I bent my arms. This was so that I could keep my shoulders above my wrist. If I keep them straight, I'm going to lean back more, and this can cause strain on your lower back and tailbone. So the key is to stay upright, looking forward, bend your elbows a little bit, and have your shoulders still directly over your wrist. Core tight, everything is engaged. Okay, now let's talk about some form that's very specific to weightlifting. We're going to talk about moves that have to do with your biceps, triceps, and shoulders. So you're going to notice in a lot of programs when we're doing base stance, people do have their feet directly under their hips, weights in their heels, okay, and their feet are lined up with one another. This is if you have really good form. Your core is really tight, your chest is up. If you struggle with your form, we want to make sure that there's a stagger to our stance. And it doesn't matter what leg you put forward, you can do whatever your dominant leg is. This is because if you don't have a strong core and don't have good form, when you start doing this, you're going to lean back. And again, that's going to cause back injury, and sometimes you'll even lean crooked if you're weaker on one side than the other. This staggered stance is going to allow you to use your muscles more appropriately without that sway type motion. My legs are actually very engaged when I'm doing this, and that's part of what's helping me keep that kinetic checkpoint, my ear to my shoulder to my hip. Now if my feet were in line, it would be ear to shoulder to hip to knee to foot, but that's going to be a maximized move. And remember, we're talking middle ground now to set you guys all up for success, and in future videos I'll break down how to make it easier or harder. So, good base stance, we have one foot slightly in front of the other, we have our kinetic checkpoints all lined up, and we're going to bring our arms up and down, ideally not swaying your arms. If you're swinging your arms in a bicep curl, your weight is probably too heavy. We want to be able to maximize and isolate that muscle without causing any problems to our shoulders. So we make sure the weight is appropriate. If we're doing a tricep move, we're going to lean forward at about 45 degrees. But notice I still have a straight line from my head to my shoulder to my hips to my knee to my foot. Okay? And then we bring our arms back and we do that tricep kickback. Our elbows are staying up and are in alignment to our body. We're looking about 18 inches to 2 feet in front of our front foot so that we can keep that perfect line. Shoulder moves, tons of people have shoulder injuries, and I even struggle with a reoccurring shoulder impingement. So I really try and be careful about how I lift my shoulders. It is a weak point in my body, and it's something that I really want to work on strengthening. So I need to keep these types of things in mind. Again, I do have good core strength and lower back and legs, so I can keep my feet underneath my hips. But if you're just starting, or you struggle with your core strength, you want to have that nice staggered stance. Your hips are in line with your shoulders, so you're very much upright, and your ears are in line with them. The hardest way, which is the most dangerous way, you're going to have your arms out to the side when you're doing your shoulder press. When you bring your arms up and down, you're going to feel your shoulders are in line with your ears, and so are your biceps. This is the most dangerous way to do a shoulder move, and it's how you're going to see it in most of the videos, because that is good form. But if you are weak in your shoulders, you do want to make sure that you're using some sort of modification to help prevent injury, or if you're new to lifting. So, if your arms are perfectly in line with your body, this is putting you at most risk to develop an injury. If you bring your arms in a little tiny bit for a 45-degree angle, you notice my shoulders are still in line with my ears, but this puts me at less risk. The least risk is to have your hands right in front of your body. You're still going to work that shoulder muscle appropriately, but your arms are at 90 degrees, okay? And it's really taking off any sort of pressure that you're putting in your back. And that being said, over time, you can start to try and move your arms out a little bit as your form continues to be perfect and you build up more shoulder strength. Let's talk about a pike. So pike is going to be mostly in our core moves or yoga type stuff. And we do want to be sure that we have really good form for this because it does put a lot of strain on your shoulders. So you're going to have that good base stance. Feet right underneath your hips. Your shoulders are in line with your hips, your ears, and your knees and feet. Then we're going to forward fold, and we're going to come out about 2 feet in front. And then you're going to notice that my ears are still in line with my shoulders, which are still in line with my hands, which are in line with my hips. And then if you look backwards, you're going to see my hips are in line with my knees, which are in line with my feet. That way, if you're doing something like diamond push-ups, you have that really good form. If you need to come up on your toes so that you don't have such tight hamstrings, you still have all those straight points. So that's the big key. We want to make sure our ankles line up with our knees, which line up with our hips, and we want to make sure our hips line up with our shoulders, which line up with our ears, which line up with our elbows, which line up with our hands. And we're about 2 feet from our feet when we do that forward fold. The last move we're going to talk about today is pull-ups. And I don't have a pull-up bar because I decided I wanted to film outside because it's nice out. But I can still show you exactly what you need to know to make sure that you're doing pull-ups correctly. So, for your standard pull-up, you're going to have your arms up above your head at kind of a wide stance, slightly wider than your shoulders. Now, that being said, some of the moves are going to require you to have your hands closer or wider, but you're still going to have the same general idea, okay? My shoulders and arms are in line with my ears. They're not forward, they're not back, they're in line. We would have a good grip on that pull-up bar, okay? Now, we want to make sure our shoulders are engaged. If you notice, when my arms are like this, my shoulders are up by my ears. This is making my shoulder joints very loose. That puts me at a huge risk. By engaging our shoulder muscles, we then use our lats, shoulders, and chest to appropriately pull us up, versus not engaging those shoulder muscles, having them loose, you're hanging, and then you try and pull them up. This puts a lot of tension on these little tiny joints. So again, shoulders are engaged. We would do that pull up using the lat, chest, and then shoulder muscles, and then coming back down, ending with our shoulders engaged. So I hope as you guys start to continue to do your workouts, you really take a moment to think about your form for every single move, even if you have to press pause and then play to make sure that you're doing things correctly. Keep an eye on the page for the next few weeks because I will be posting different modifications to make moves easier, as well as ways to make moves a little more intense. So you can customize every program that you do just for you. Have a great day.